Here in Saskatchewan, people who had planned vacations for this month are still waiting on refunds and figuring out if they'll get to travel. This is the latest blow to the travel industry in our province. For more on the state of airline travel in Saskatchewan, we're joined by John Gradek. He's a lecturer at McGill University and an expert in aviation issues, regulations, and passenger rights based in Montreal. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
People in Saskatchewan are seeing fewer and fewer direct flights. We lost Calgary through Air Canada and previously Chicago and Denver. What do you make of the air travel situation in Saskatchewan?
Well, unfortunately, Saskatchewan seems to have gotten the short end of the travel stick, as we say, over the last few months, with both Air Canada and WestJet, playing around with the schedules and trying to figure out what type of service can just, people of Saskatchewan expect from carriers. And Sunwing's announcement about, canceling services in January this month, further compounds the problem. I think that, what's happening in the Canadian aviation industry is that, we have, a significant issue with inflation, with cost controls, and with the need for carriers to really examine their flight schedules and understand, can they continue to operate the schedule that they have, and where are those things in the flight schedule that have a weak return to the airline on the investment required to support the route. And the Sunwing example is probably the the one that hurts the most. In that, I'm not sure how many seats were sold on the flight. There are quite a few, from what I understand. Other than that, a wedding party seems to be one that's coming back to mind all the time. But I think the decision that was made by Sunwing is really one of economics, and they can basically look at a market, and they can decide on a short notice without any having no advance notice requirements to let people that hold reservations that they're no longer supporting that service. So this is the vagaries of the marketplace. We are in a free market. We are in competition. Carriers come, carriers go. And as you saw with Air Canada services being withdrawn, there's no requirement for notice. And that's where Saskatchewan residents basically are caught in a situation like that.
There seems to be a lot of pent-up demand for travel right now, so one would think airlines would be adding more flights, not stopping them entirely. What's behind this generally?
Well, I think the carriers are looking for an easy out. They don't want to work too hard for that revenge travel market. They know that the larger markets, when it's Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, or Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, those markets basically there's a lot of demand for travel among those points, and it's a lot easier to operate. There's a lot more. It's a solid market that can fill airplanes up pretty quickly, right? So I think that what's happening is that they're going after the low hanging fruit in terms of air travel market. They're going after the easy markets. They're not going after the tougher markets. Not that Saskatchewan is tough. I can get people off the couch in Saskatchewan pretty easily to fly on airplanes, and I just price it. Why don't I fly, operate, Saskatchewan to Vancouver for $9 or Saskatchewan to Toronto for $79? I fill the airplane, not a problem. But the carriers, are not that creative, unfortunately. And so there's no incentive for them to basically try to stimulate the market in trying to get more people on airplanes. They're just going after the easy way out, which is basically suspend services and then increase services, in fact, to other city pairs in Canada.
We look next door where Manitoba used public money to help WestJet add more direct flights, including one to Los Angeles. Is that what Saskatchewan should be doing?
It's an option. It's something that you got to be careful. You're going to you're going to slide down the slippery slope. That why do you give it to a new carrier operating, Saskatchewan to Los Cabos, and why aren't you giving the same offering to carriers operating between Saskatchewan and Alberta? So there's a bit of a risk that you might be opening up a can of worms by offering it to one carrier and not the other. I think on the Winnipeg LA, very, very, very narrowly focused incentive program. It's not, and they're not cannibalizing existing services out of Winnipeg. Winnipeg passengers going to LA had to either go to Vancouver or had to go to Toronto. So using Winnipeg LA is probably a good example. So, if I go from Regina to Las Vegas or Saskatoon to Las Vegas, probably a good route, a good market to play in, because I'm not cannibalizing anything. So, that's an example of a route that you may want to consider providing an incentive to carriers. And, the Winnipeg situation was not cheap. It's going to cost the Winnipeg Airport Authority and Winnipeg Manitoba government some dollars and cents. So there has to be a will by both the airport and by the provincial government in this case for the prospect of building up a new service and providing some financial support for that service.
We do see a lot of people in Saskatchewan driving to the United States to fly with other airlines for both less money and better destinations. What impact does that have locally in Canada?
It does have a lot. I think Saskatchewan is one example of several, whether it's in Vancouver going to Seattle or whether it's Toronto going to Buffalo or Montreal going to Plattsburgh. There are a number of border cities and border airports that really have basically siphoned off Canadian traffic. I don't think it's that big a market. The people that are very price sensitive, if you want to go from Saskatchewan to Florida, yeah, it makes some sense to cut across the border and go out on North Dakota. But the situation in the U.S. border points close to Saskatchewan, there's not a lot of competition there either. And the prices, are not that unreasonable versus what a connection over Toronto would give you. But yeah, there's enough of an incentive for people to drive. But yeah, it is a concern, and carriers do look at that, particularly in the bigger markets, not just much.
How long before we start to see things improve, whether it's more flights or just a general improvement in the airline industry in general?
I think the industry is in good shape. I think I think there's, the Canadian air travel market is recovering and is recovering very well. I think we're up to about 90% of what they had operating in 2018, 2019 in terms of seats. The market's not recovering in the same way. More and more passengers are flying for leisure, and there's less business demand. Business has, in fact, cut back significantly on air travel, and they're using things like Zoom or other video conferencing facilities to supplement, the trips that they used to fly. So the business traffic has dropped. Leisure traffic has been at the same level, if not slightly higher. But the airlines are not making a lot more money. The guys making the money, the guys paying a bill for regular air service in Canada have traditionally been the business travelers with the full fare economy fares at 5 or 6 times the price with leisure fares, leisure carriers or leisure fares are in the marketplace. So, airlines are getting squeezed by, by low fares and high cost. Fuel is not going to go anywhere south in the next little while. It's going to stay at its current level, if not go higher. So, the airlines are caught and squeezed. So, in terms of the Canadian air travel market, we've got Flair, we've got Lynx, we've got Jet Canada Jet Lines. We're going to have Porter in a few weeks, over and above what we have with Air Canada, WestJet, and Swoop. So we've got lots of competition. I think that, if you can convince my friends over at Flair or Lynx to basically come and offer a service out of Saskatchewan, you're going to have a very good ear to hear from both Flair and Lynx. They're looking for opportunities to fly further into Canada.
Thank you so much for your time and your perspective, John.